order. And we have a little bit of business to take up, hopefully. At this time, I'd like to recognize Representative Parrish. What number are you, Representative Parrish?
Chairman, at the proper time, I would like to make a motion that the committee reconsider its action in failing to give House Bill 318 a due pass recommendation.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Any discussion? No discussion? Yes, changes have been made. We are looking at LC 343815ER-ECS. There's a motion and a second. No more discussion. All those in favor of considering this bill, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, Chairman Stevens, would you like to present this bill, the new and greatest and latest version?
Yes, sir. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, first of all, I want to apologize deeply for leaving to go to Canada and leaving a bill that I never got a chance to see the final version of. Whenever I left on Thursday afternoon, it was my understanding that the offensive, well, the language that was supposed to be taken out was going to be taken out, and the two provisions that were going to cause a problem were going to be taken out. They have been in this particular version of House Bill 218. If we're looking at LC 343816ER-ECS.
We have both. We have two versions in our packet. We are looking at the one that's 1.6.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll look at, and I'll be very brief and just scan over the bill. This, as you might remember, let me just refresh your memory. This is could be the largest economic development, tourism, attraction, destination piece of legislation that the state has ever had. And the idea behind this, and we stole it from Kentucky model that, of course, used it for their equestrian industry, and it has worked enormously. Very simply, if you are approved under the rules and regulations of the department for a tourism destination project, over 10 years, up to 25% of the entire cost of the project can be recouped after you build the project once the turnstiles start through sales tax. So we're doing nothing until they build the project, once they put the bricks and mortars in. If you'll look on page 2 in section 1, it talks about for each tourism project, of course, this is important, that only one company can get approved under this article. You cannot continually get this particular tax credit. That's important. On page 3, it tells what a tourism attraction is and the definition. Section 2, as you might remember, there was the constitutional issue about the governor having sole discretion to name these projects. Not only was the governor taken out, but we have a check and balance system where both the Commissioner of Economic Development and the Commissioner of Community Affairs on line 108 will be in charge of making that decision. And that's another check and balance system. On page 5, if you'll notice there on line number 143, probably again one of the strongest pieces of the legislation is that you cannot layer other tax exemptions on this particular bill. If you take this one, this is the only one that you can take, and it's the only one as a company. There's no jobs tax credits by the state. There are no other incentives by the state that can be applied on this particular bill. The locals can still do their own. In fact, as I'll tell you in just a minute, the locals, that is the trigger that they have to be a participant in these local tourism attraction bills. And that's on 168. It says that resolutions from the governing authority of the county or city, if any, of the tourism attraction will be located in, and endorsing the tourism attraction project, which is the trigger, including appropriate affirmative clauses regarding permitting, land use, local incentives, and provisions for the local infrastructure. That must be done in the permitting process to be approved. The floor on this, but these to be considered as some of these projects is $1 million. That was in the original bill. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some South Georgia projects that $1 million tourism attraction, destination attraction project can be worth $100 million in down in Representative Houston's district, for example. Might be worth $100 million in Atlanta. So I would ask that you keep that. The tourism project must be open 100 days per year minimum, and it must attract at least 25% of the people from out of state that come to this tourism destination project. Section 6 on page 7 has to do with the local sales tax pieces. That's the other piece that was considered to be unconstitutional. We can't go in and delegate under a particular bill that local option sales tax, for example, the fifth penny, that we can mandate on these local areas that be a part of this particular tourism destination attraction. They can't lose that because it was voted on by the public. So essentially, Mr. Chairman, this eliminates the two constitutional questions so that we can move forward. The sole discretion of the governor was taken totally out. Both the Department of Economic Development and the Department of Community Affairs will be the two commissioners that decide where these projects and where they qualify after the rules and regs are promulgated. We finally have a bill, I believe, that will pass the muster constitutionally and finally would allow us some Disney World type attractions to come to our state. And I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a certain individual that has questions, and I hope he's not trying to get back at you from last week.
No,
Chairman
no, I'm not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm not, but this is one of the issues that was brought up on line 153. There was the attempt to make an issue out of this, which I had stated that this was, to me, was not an issue. It was just that the governor, along with community affairs and the other state, the appropriate state agencies, were in the process, or in this, the process of the standards, setting the standards for the application. And I've never thought that this had any indication that the governor was to determine the projects themselves, but because that came up last week, it may come up again, and I think that would need to be addressed during the presentation.
And I appreciate that. And this probably is another oversight. I'm sure that we pulled all of these out. If you're asking me, would I accept an amendment to strike that language in consultation with the governor, I will accept that as an amendment.
If that's appropriate, Mr. Chair.
I think it's appropriate at this time.
All right, I'd ask that we amend on line 153 of this bill, in section 3, where it says the Commissioner of Community Affairs, in consultation with the appropriate state agencies, shall establish the standards for, just striking with the governor.
So we're striking
with the governor and then start with other appropriate state agencies.
So we have a motion. Is there a second? Okay. More discussion. Right.
What is the benefit of taking the governor out of that? I don't understand that.
Speak to that, and I addressed that this last week. I see no reason of taking it out. The only reason, if cleaning this up that makes it more palatable, I'm certainly willing to offer an amendment to that. This has nothing to do with the governor, as I read it and understand it. This has no real connection with approval of projects. I even stated last week that there was no reason to take the governor out of this particular line. And but if the author of the bill wants to take it out and we needed a motion for that, I'll do that. But personally, I don't see that it actually needs that, at least that one. But the opposition last week made an issue out of this. There was two. One that has been eliminated, and then also this one. Well, if it hadn't specifically been talked about of line 153, I would not even bring it up.
Mr. Chairman, I have no opposition to this. This is, I'm sure, another oversight. For those members of the committee who think that the appointed members of the commissioners of the Department of Community Affairs and Economic Development aren't consulted by the governor, and I've got a bridge in Savannah that I'm going to put up for sale. So I have no opposition at all to this particular piece. For clarifying purposes, come out with the consultation with the governor that language come out, because it is implied and it does happen.
Okay, we got a motion. Did we have a second on the amendment? Okay, so we had a second. We got some more discussion. Number 28. Chairman Dixon.
I would say, first of all, I don't recall this as being one of the parts that was in contention last time we met. There were two places in the bill where it specifically gave the governor control of the flow of the legislation. This was not one of those. So I'm not familiar with that being a real bone of contention last time. But if there is going to be that amendment, I would say leave the word "within," and all you need to take out is the governor and. Those three words.
That's the motion.
Is that a
Okay.
substitute motion?
Thank you. Who is number 26? Chairman Houston.
I have no objection.
Okay.
As the author of the bill, I have no objection.
Okay.
Defer to you.
And I appreciate noting that. As you recall, this was still warm when we got it last week. I think Representative Pruitt had said this thing is hot, and it was hot. But I would even add this to my amendment that we strike also line 191 and renumber.
So we have a motion.
The change on 153, as Representative Dixon had mentioned, and then striking 191.
Do we have a second?
We need to amend that motion again because if you take out what was the number? 191, you have to change 190 also. You have to take out the and the semicolon and place a period in the quotation marks, because you're ending the sentence there on 190 when you take out 191.
That's right. You can tell these educators.
All right, we've got one more person that has a question before let's do
And you
this
can
all.
tell those we failed with.
Let's make this motion all-encompassing, and I've got one other member that wants to ask a question. Representative Rogers?
No, it's not a question. I think Chairman Stevens pretty much answered it, but I would think on 191, meet other criteria as deemed appropriate by the governor, I would think that would probably be more of an objection than 153, because I think Chairman Stevens said it well. If you think that the Department of Community Affairs and the Department of Economic Development is not going to consult with the executive branch, they're There probably is a couple bridges in Savannah that could be sold. I really don't have any objection to 153, 191, to, you know, whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question. On 170, we talk about, you know, I guess starting in 168, talk about the local governing authorities requirements. On 170, we talk about local incentives. Is there a bar we're going to require them at least a minimum amount to contribute, or are we just going to let the communities determine that?
That's going to have to be in their initial, whenever they do the rules and regs to approve these projects. Part of the local incentive piece is going to have to be sent in along with their resolution for what the cities and counties and locals are going to do. And this is the trigger to get any of these projects off the ground, is what's in that initial proposal for the local involvement. And that's, I mean, there's no threshold. It's just, you know, the cities have to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Do you have any more questions? Okay, if I may be so bold as to state a motion for an amendment that on line 153 we strike the governor, and line 190 we strike the comma or the semicolon and at the end of line 190, and also strike line 191. Do I hear a motion? Moved. Is there a second? Second. Was there more discussion?
Add the period and the quotation marks on 190. You've got to end the sentence.
Who's number 8? Chairman Pruitt.
Thank you. I just want to ask the author, are you okay with all these things we're talking about right now?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Are we ready to vote? All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Any opposed? Amendment carries. What's the pleasure of the committee? We have a motion to pass 318 as amended and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Mr.
members of the
Chairman.
committee.